Hello everybody! Today we're looking at the meta. Not all the meta, just 2 DPS specs for now. We're gonna cover everything on it, but we're looking at Unholy DK and Boomkins and why are they so played, so good. You see them all the keys. Will we see them in the MDI though?
That's a very good question. Well, obviously the main reason is because everybody knows like damage, but it's not just damage, and we're gonna go over all of this as well.
We're gonna break it down, like each spec and why it's particularly good in some situations, what it does apart from the damage, because we all know the damage is there, and maybe get a better understanding on why these specs are so played at the highest key levels. And I think these specs also do well at mid-range keys. I mean, you can see Unholies and Balance Druids pumping 11s and 12s and 13s no problem and shining over there. It's basically a game of hope the mobs don't die too fast.
Yeah, that's a very good point to make, because a lot of people play these specs in lower end keys and they don't do damage and they don't know exactly what's going on, and tanks don't know. So we can actually start off with this. So right now, as of recording this, I think both of these specs have done plus 20 since most of the time they're in the same team. So that wouldn't be entirely surprising. But you mentioned one thing that's important is that they're doing fine in mid-range to high keys, which depends on what you consider mid-range. I say, let's say from 12s and higher.
Yeah, I see some do good in 11s as well.
Yeah, it depends mostly on the comp, but what you have to understand with both of these specs is that they have a little bit of a ramp up. So if things die too quick, of course, they don't get to do their amazing things, and particularly for Unholy, part of the ramp up is fishing for that Blood Beast, bro.
Blood Beast, yeah. Well, speaking of ramp up, Unholy DK used to have a proper ramp up back in the days. I mean, it was pretty much a simple rotation like last season. Nowadays, it's just like it's silly, man. It's silly. So I think this is one advantage. I know a lot of people don't like it, don't like this version. Me included, I don't like this version of Unholy DK. But you have to admit, if it's simple rotation, that means efficiency. That means you're able to get those high numbers, especially in big packs, because we are talking like the biggest value here for Unholy DKs being big pulls. Think about the first pull in Cinderbrew, think about the first pull in Priory. So being a simplified rotation, even though, yes, it does have its little rampy whatever, the downside of still having some sort of a ramp up is the fact that, if you're gonna like not invite anybody except an Unholy DK in your +9 key, then that Unholy DK might not even get its value over there, because those mobs will die fast and he won't have time to do its Giga AoE damage. And I think it's maybe the same story for Boomkin in some capacity.
So just to finish up with the Unholy, the whole part of the ramp up is not really a traditional ramp, but it's the RNG aspect of it, because there is
also RNG. Yes, of course.
The level of RNG actually matters, and you'll see it more in the lower end keys, because if things die too quick, you end up being outside of combat way longer.
and the Blood Beast spawns when everybody dies.
That's that's been almost all of my Blood Beasts when I've tried to play Unholy this season. It was especially depressing, which is not something that Balance Druid has. Balance Druid has an actual ramp up, and you essentially just tap target Moonfire a bunch of times.
Sure, but it's still a very simple rotation.
Yeah, no. The rotation is simple. It just takes time, and it's at least it's a little bit more reliable. There's no RNG revolving Balance Druid. And when you look at some of the top keys done, whether or not you want to compare Unholy with Balance in terms of their damage, usually Balance is the reliable, the safer one when it comes to just constantly performing up top. When Unholy pops, it pops.
Because Unholy still relies on that Blood Beast RNG, sure. And this is why Boomkin is a little bit more reliable. And if you look at, I don't know, some random logs or somewhere, you're going to see like Boomkin can top off the damage of Unholy DK in a big pull. I don't know, I think we looked at a Priory. When the Blood Beast is there,
there's no competition. And I want to mention, I think we were looking at, was this either JPC's or Yoda's group that was doing a high Priory, and the Balance Druid was just topping the meters. But Unholy was still doing about 12 million DPS, which is crazy.
Even with that,
I'm pretty sure he might have gotten a Blood Beast. Maybe it was a weaker one. Maybe procced a little bit at the beginning. Doesn't really matter. But there's kind of like a back and forth between these two specs. I don't think it's good to like compare the damage.
The truth is, both of these specs kind of end up in the same groups anyway. This doesn't mean that your group will not have its value like raised up, having either a Boomkin or an Unholy DK, at least from +12s going forward, right? But when you look at the highest keys possible, these two specs kind of go hand in hand, because why wouldn't they? Especially in dungeons, as we mentioned, like Cinderbrew, Dark Flame, Priory, where you're going to have big pulls, right? Now, it's not only about the damage. They
No,
do
no.
a lot of damage in big pools. That's fine. And I would say they do decent single target. I know like the comps that have these two specs usually tend to run with a mage as well, or some sort of
The top comps, yeah.
Yeah, and usually the other spec that is in there.
That's the boss killer.
That's the boss killer, right? So you have to like take into account this as well. So they're very good. They're taken on all over the place. But boss damage is not terrible, but you definitely have other specs that do much better.
You'll start to feel the boss damage lacking whenever you go higher and higher keys. In some of these higher keys, I think it was the world first plus 19 Dark Flame Cleft showed a route where pretty much you just keep pulling adds into bosses, and this is a recurring thing that we've seen over the years in MDI. The higher in key you go, you just don't have as much time. If you figure out a way to survive, and there's definitely plenty of ways to survive with these two specs, specifically Unholy, you'll end up just pulling a lot of stuff into the boss because there's just not enough time to kill everything.
Yeah, and this strategy works specifically with DKs because DKs also have grips. They can pull mobs very fast
that's so helpful.
to AoE and cleave damage as well. Not to mention that when you do this type of strategy, pulling other mobs into bosses, you kind of need a little bit more sustainability. Now, Unholy DKs does kind of bring that as well because you are very tanky. You have Death Strike to heal yourself if that requires it. Boomkin is not that tanky.
The Boomkin is not tanky.
Okay, Boomkin, it doesn't have the greatest defensives in the world, but it has bar skin, bear form, whatever that means.
This is like well, listen, we know the controversial take on bear form with Balance Druid. It's not anybody's favorite defensive, but it is a strong defensive. You get a boost in HP, you get a boost in armor, and God forbid you can pop a frenzy regen if you talent into it, which is a very strong heal. You don't do damage essentially. It's kind of like a mage ice block where you're not actually immune.
Yeah.
And with some of the talents, you get to take a little bit of a buff in stats once you move out from bear form into Balance Druid, into Moonkin form essentially, and that's okay, but you're not essentially taking the Balance Druid for the sustainability or the.
No.
It's
more the
it's basically the
Unholy DK wins here.
No, for sure. And the only reason Balance can keep up is because it's range. So you just dodge a lot of the stuff. So you're the Unholy DK of range. That's kind of, you can think about it that way in terms of like what it can bring, but in terms of defensiveness, like nothing can compete with AMZ, for instance. That's just an extra added layer.
AMZ is yet another great tool for Unholy DKs to like help out, especially in like rot damage phases, like, you know, think of a swamp phase in a floodgate. There is also like still in floodgate, if you don't decide to like skip the little fish that also
Bubbles.
is very helpful there. Bubbles. Still in floodgate, the last boss, the sequence with the big area. So AMZ is very useful, and not only that, like when I'm thinking about like the utility, the quote unquote utility of Unholy DK in dungeons, like, you know, you can use grips as well to like stop mobs from casting. This is another important aspect because you're gonna get a lot of mobs into a boss if you're gonna go for that strategy, but those mobs tend to have a lot of casts. If they don't have a lot of casts to be interrupted, they have a lot of, I'm thinking Dark Flame all the time, those throw rocks, and they hit hard, so you have like blinding shade as well to like disrupt. You have your stun as well, but also Boomkin brings to the table, you know, the Typhoon, the Vortex, the AoE silence. I kind of hate the AoE silence. It's a goddamn one minute cooldown, but there's some combos.
Depending on how you use it, and I wanted to point out with the grips, because due to the nature of how we do our keys, and the comp that we have, we end up a lot of the time in CCDR, which is when everybody just has a stun, everybody shoots out their stun, and then they're immune to stuns. This is the benefit of having a Druid and a DK, is that the grips don't usually have anything that they can DR with, and I don't think you can be DR'd to a knockback or a pull in. I don't know if that exists in the game.
No, but grip surely doesn't have DR.
Plus Balance Druid has Disrupting Roar, which stops a lot of the casts. It's the only disorient that I think any top groups run at the moment, or the only that actually can exist. I'm not sure if there's any other. Maybe Mass Blind from Rogues, but that's such like a niche thing. That would be the only other thing that can come up with it. And you mentioned about the silence, because you don't like it that it's a minute, and I think it can get to 45 seconds. But what you can do, and you've seen our Balance Druid do it as well, is you put the, this is a little bit expensive, but you do put the Vortex down and then you Typhoon all of the casters. They will of course be pushed back, stopping whatever cast they have, and then grouped back into the center, and then they will most likely start to recast things, and then that's when you can put the silence down and you can just interrupt 2, 3, 4 casters at once, depending on how many you have in a group, and that's really good. That's like 4 kicks in one.
It's a great sequence of just stopping a lot of AoE.
But you use your Typhoon for that as well. So
yeah, you basically consume 3 globals, so it's good, right? But again, in relation with Unholy DK and some other spec you're playing within the comp, you tend to have a lot of stops, and especially when you go for the strategy of pulling a lot of mobs either by themselves or to a boss. These 2 specs can handle any type of like CC, dangerous cast or whatever. There's also the fact that both of these specs have combat rezzes. Now, of course, when you look at like super high keys, you don't really see people die that often, but when they do, man, you can rely.
You need that resolved really quick, and fast. People talk about having cables, and cables are nice. And I think we probably have some footage of us using cables as well.
I think in yesterday's 14th theater, I tried to resurrect our Balance Druid colleague.
Yeah.
I think I did, but he was kind of like,
it's just very inefficient. It takes a long time. It worked. It's not the same thing as instantly popping a raise dead from Unholy, or even casting the battle res from Boomkin. So that actually matters a lot, and especially it matters because it's on 2 classes and not just 1 class, which we've probably seen some of the teams. But ideally, like you said, whenever you're pushing high keys, the deaths are very expensive, and you don't really.
Yeah, you want that fast reaction. And again, this is why, like, for example, if you're gonna think about some of the, Dark Flame is like, I think the most consistent key push, and sometimes it's kind of the first one to be breaking down for the highest.
Yeah, it's the easiest key to push.
It's the easiest key, right? So I always think about, okay, Unholy DK, Balance Druid, whatever. Okay, why is like Unholy DK better than Frost DK or Arms Warrior in that situation? Well, of course, you're going to talk about the damage, obviously, but there's also the fact that all of these melees, like you think about a plate melee, or even like, I don't know, rogues and such, demon hunters, whatever. I feel like Unholy kind of has it all for this dungeon, and Boomkin as well. Remember, Boomkin also has decurs, which is very useful this time.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of curses.
Like Brookery, Theater of Pain, and those hurt, man. Especially like when you go above 14s and stuff, those hurt a lot.
Oh yeah, they're like you mentioned this, and this is very important to point out. In Theater of Pain, that curse is a no negotiation, has to be dispelled. There's
the one where we pulled the
Portal Keeper, the Soul Stone caster.
So bad.
Yeah, that's either you dispel it or you immune it. The higher in keys you go, obviously we're talking about the higher end keys. Doesn't apply the lower end keys that you do. You can probably heal through it if you have a really good healer. But those are situations where, okay, that's something that you legit need to have something to deal with. Sometimes you can muscle through with a strong defensive, but realistically, a dispel just solves so much.
Yeah, there's also the fact that when you think about comparing Unholy DKs with, I don't know, other melees, Anti-Magic Shield can cheese so many mechanics.
Yeah.
It's unreal. So many mechanics. There's like, and this season has a lot of like magic dots that need to be dispelled. It has a lot of like magic mechanics that can also be negated with Anti-Magic Shield. This was always the case with DKs, to be fair.
Yeah.
It's not something new, but it's even more prevalent this season because it just, speaking from a healer's point of view, it's such a relief to not worry about one spec. Usually our comp evolves with 4 fucking squishies, myself included, so it's a little bit more stressful, right? But when we have like an Unholy DK in the group, it's like that is one person I don't really have to look at too much. And Boomkin I have to look at. It's
this is an important thing because you mentioned this at the beginning with the rotation for Unholy being very simple. Limiting the amount of things your brain has to think about definitely helps, because the higher in the keys you go, or the more you try to push yourself, the more things you have to add on your plate. Extra casters, pull with boss, a lieutenant that you normally skip, or whatever, right? That stuff, and you have to constantly think about it, because things that were just like, oh, this just did some damage to me like a few keys ago, now, oh, this will kill me now. So adding all of this and offloading some of that brain power that you normally shove into your rotation or into defensives or into how am I going to live this, that's very important.
It's again efficiency, because yes, as you mentioned, you have a lot more brain space to do other things, which is great, especially in this season all around. But I guess, like, just to wrap it up, these two specs right now are among the best in the game in terms of Mythic Plus. Again, there's other specs that can compete or are at the same ranking on Archon.gg, at least in the S tier, which we're going to cover. Hopefully, we broke down most of their positives, because there are some negatives as well. If you think about it, like DK has no mobility because they ain't playing Rider, they're playing Salad. It's shit. Boomkin is giga squishy. If there's a Boomkin in my party as a Discipline Priest,
they're locked in, just like,
that's my
buddy.
Shields, like if I place a shield on my Boomkin and something is coming, and we had that happen yesterday in our 14th theater again. One Bone Spear casted, all interrupts on cooldown, pretty much no CCs. One Bone Spear being casted on my friendly Boomkin, and he died.
It's not a
so there's negatives as well, but hopefully we made it a lot more clearer,
just why they're good. Obviously, the number one reason is always going to be damage, because otherwise you would have Frost DK overtake Unholy, because they have it's the same utility. We're probably going to touch on that, because something's going on with Frost DK, man.
Hey, let us know in the comments what you play, what you think about these two specs, and please, for the love of God, do not try to fish out Unholy DKs and Balance Druids in +9s and +10s. They're not going to be worth it. Their value is not going to be there. I mean, sure, if you're trying to push keys more and more from like 11s, 12s, 13s, 14s, sure, then you can make an argument for that, especially in like big pulls. But if you just want to do your weekly 10s, invite anybody, they're going to do just fine. We're talking here super high keys, looking at all the data from the highest things. But do let us know in the comments what you think.
Down below.
And make sure to check out this video right here to understand what the fuck was last Friday about, because I forgot.
It was a tanks and healers tier list, everybody. Enjoy. It's really good.
Click it! Click!